Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our session. And before starting the session, I would like to ask you a few questions. First of all, who in this room is the parent of a child? Okay, we have a few parents. And who of you have already gone on a road trip with your child? Okay, so the next question should hit somewhere home, because I have a question for you. You can scan the QR code. Actually, I invite you to scan the QR code, fill in your response, and answer the question of what's your child's favorite question on a road trip? Is it, can I sleep? Probably not. Are we there yet? Can I drive? Or you will pretend that your child is a perfect child and that your child is quiet. And in order to have your answers, I need to click the Are We There Yet button. In a similar fashion than what your child is doing when you're on a road trip. And I see that we have seven responses, but as you can imagine, that's not a very efficient way of doing things, right? We don't want to be pulling our backend to have an update about what's happening. And that's exactly what today's talk is about. It's about how you can implement WebSockets in your applications to build asynchronous frontends, or as I like to call it, how can we solve the Are We There Yet problem? I'm Alexis. I'm a senior startup solutions architect working at AWS, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Derek, and I will let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Alexis. Hello, everyone. My name is Derek, and I'm also a startup solution architect here at AWS. And today, I'm really excited to be taking you through how to actually implement WebSockets and get real-time updates in the quiz application that we have, and also in your application. So let's look at how we can go about learning more about this technology and implementing it.
Does that work?
Yeah. So we'll kick it off with a quiz. And I'll also invite you to scan the QR code above and answer the question, how many options are there to implement serverless WebSockets on AWS? So the answers range from 1 to 5. And yeah, it can take a few seconds. And for those who have noticed, there is no button to click to keep on refreshing. So how many have been successful without any errors? Anyone? Yeah, so you do notice that it doesn't work because it's actually broken. So at the moment, we are not able to actually get these real-time updates because there is no button to click and that the WebSockets have not been implemented yet. So we're going to look at how to actually go about implementing these different ways, the different ways you can actually implement it. But not to leave you hanging, the answer is actually 4. So let's look at these 4 methods. So we'll start with the first one, is using the Amazon API Gateway. Yeah, the Amazon API Gateway. And the Amazon API Gateway gives you a bit more flexibility and a bit more customization as you're able to manage the connections and message broadcasting. And you do get this ability using the raw API or the raw WebSocket API. The second option is using the AWS AppSync GraphQL subscription. And using this method, it's a fully managed service where you get managed connections and also managed message broadcasting, with the caveat being that you do have to implement this solution using GraphQL. So for those people who are comfortable with GraphQL and would like to learn how to use GraphQL, this would be a great option. And then we have the AWS AppSync events, which is the new kid on the block. So it was announced in reInvent 2024, and it does have managed connections and message broadcasting, where you are able to access the raw WebSocket API using the PubSub API available to it. And finally, we have the AWS IoT Core, which gives you managed connections and message broadcasting. But the only difference is you do get WebSockets over the MQTT protocol, and you do need to work with MQTT libraries, which is for those people who don't have the experience using it, it's an additional step towards getting to implement these WebSockets. So for our application, we actually went through implementing the Amazon API gateway, and we do have to set up the connection management and the message broadcasting. And later on, we'll see how to actually use the AWS AppSync events. So let's take a look at the architecture of how we actually ended up implementing the Amazon API gateway. So this is how the architecture looks like. And as you can see, you, the audience, were able to see the results every single time you are able to submit the answers to the question. And these answers are sent through the API Gateway WebSocket API. And for this, you need to set up 3 routes. The first one is used to set up the connection route, which establishes a connection and is able to store the ID, the connection ID, on a DynamoDB database. The second one is the disconnect route, which is able to terminate the connection, or you can add some logic to remove the connection ID from the DynamoDB database. And finally, we have the default route. And this is where the core functionality or the business use case the business code is implemented, and we do this on the Lambda function. So in the default route is where we actually go and fetch the connection IDs from the DynamoDB database, and then loop over all these connection IDs and send the responses to you, the audience. And so this is where we need to fix the code that is running on a Lambda function. So let's look at how to actually go about adding this functionality to the code that we have. So let's see how we can actually fix this. So we will jump into the code editor, where we will be able to create this code. But since we are in the year 2025, where people use code editors, so we'll be using a coding assistant. And in our case specifically, we'll be using Amazon Q Developer to help us generate the code. And for this, we'll prompt it to implement a Lambda function that has the functionality of first going and retrieving the stored connection IDs from the DynamoDB database, and then loop over these connection IDs and send the responses so that we may be able to see the poll results. So as you can see, it was quite fast. Amazon Q Developer has already generated the code. And just to explain, to go over the code, so the first thing we do is get all the connected clients or the connection IDs that are stored in DynamoDB using the scan command. And then secondly, we do broadcast the message to all the connected clients. And then finally, we handle some errors that might occur. And if there are any stale connections, we do remove them from the DynamoDB table. So if it's successful, we have like a 200 code, and if it fails, we have some error to have this. Then finally, we'll deploy it using the CDK deploy command, and it will take a few seconds. So instead of staring at the screen, we can go to the next part, which is how to actually connect your front end to the API Gateway WebSocket API. So the first thing you need to do is create a new WebSocket, and then we will handle some logic, and when we handle some logic, or we can run some functionality when we open, close, or then there are any errors in the WebSocket when we run the code. Then there's also the part where we are that matters most to us, which is actually sending the responses or the answers to the questions that we have. So for this, we can use the send API or the send call, and we do provide the question ID and the answers. And then finally, once we've already sent the answers, it is displayed back to you using the onMessage function. And this is where we run the update poll results. So hopefully, the code has already deployed using CDK. And I'll give it over to Alexis to continue the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
All right. So hopefully, our deployment was successful. And now is the moment of truth. we will try to understand whether it was successful. So please scan the QR code, and we should see your responses coming in. So the question is, which service was announced in reInvent 2024? And I see that quite a lot of people were actually listening to Derek when he was talking, so that's a positive point. And we see that we have actually fixed our WebSocket API because we were able to implement this broadcasting logic, and we are now able to receive those messages as part of our WebSocket API. And as Derek promised, he promised that we would also show you how to use AppSync events. But in order to make it a bit more exciting, let's have a look at another use case where it might be useful. So our task today together is to actually create this game. So we have already the front end implemented, but we will create a game where you, the audience, will be able to reveal a mystery image by clicking on tiles, and it should be reflected on everyone's device at the same time. Okay? And the architecture for it is fairly simple. As you can see, we have a user, which is probably you, the audience, and we have the subscribers, which is also you, the audience, right? So you will be clicking on tiles, and you expect to see those tiles being revealed from your clicks, but from clicks from the audience as well. And how do we do that? Is we enable that by having an AppSync Events API as the central point of our architecture. And the AppSync Events API will allow you to have a fully managed WebSocket API on which you have a channel called Mystery, and for each or a namespace called Mystery, and for each namespace you can have a specific channel based on the game ID. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, and obviously it sounds quite simple, right? So let's go to the. Come back. Okay, Derek, I let you do it. All right. So now, in that piece of code, we are in a CDK construct, and what we need to do is to create the infrastructure. So what we need to do is to create an AppSync Events API. Then we need to have to be creating a channel namespace called Mystery. So that we are able to broadcast messages on that specific channel. And then we are creating an API key to be able to access our PubSub API. Okay? So now Amazon Q Developer is thinking about how to build that. And again, I hope that you're all using Coding Assistant because it's a very useful tool in order to do so. And it was quite successful in creating the necessary resources. We see that it has created an Events API with an API name. It has created a channel namespace with a namespace called Mystery. And then it has created an API key. So let's go ahead and deploy that with, again, the CDK deploy command. And while it's deploying, let's, for example, have a look at the similar construct that we needed to implement for our API Gateway WebSocket API. Okay? As you can see, it needed way more code in terms of infrastructure, up to 93 lines of code to create the API, the 3 Lambda functions that are needed, and on top of that, you also need to implement the code for each of those Lambda functions, which is quite a lot of work. While with our new construct, in approximately 28 lines of code, we are able to implement the exact same logic, because broadcasting and connection management is done for you by the AppSync Events API. So the deployment is ongoing. It should take an additional few seconds. And what we will be doing is we will be analyzing the outputs of our deployment to fetch the API key and to fetch the real-time, the DNS of our real-time API, so that we can then use it to connect to our API. So let's first copy our events API key, and let's go back to our presentation. And in our presentation, we can enter the API key. Let's go back to our code, and then copy the subdomain of our real-time DNS. And let's save it. And we should see a first player, which is ourselves. We are connected to this WebSocket API. Now we invite you all to connect to it, because we will need all your help to be able to reveal the mystery image, and there will be a goodie, right? So we have already 9 players connected. I'm sure we can do better. I see more than 9 people in the audience. We are 15, 16, 18, 19. That's fantastic. OK, it's still increasing. 25 people. That's exciting. OK, still increasing. Is anyone in the room not connected yet? OK. I see a few hands up, so we'll leave you a few seconds. We have time, so that's fine. We are in a good company, so I'm happy. But yeah, the idea, once everyone is connected, we will start a game. I think you all have a loading state, right, at the moment. And once we start the game, the tiles will reveal, and then I will need your help. Everyone will need to start clicking on the tiles. Let's get to that game. Next page. All right. And let's start a game. All right. And I see that the audience is very quick. And actually, I mean, it took only a few seconds, and I think it should have reflected on your devices as well. Maybe some people have not been able to connect in time, but you can take a screenshot of the QR code, or you can scan the QR code here. The QR code that is presented here will bring you on a GitHub repository. And this GitHub repository shows you an implementation of the 4 patterns of serverless WebSockets on AWS. So I will remind you, the first pattern is API Gateway WebSockets. Second pattern is AppSync GraphQL APIs with true subscriptions. Third pattern is AppSync Events API, the one that we just saw now with the game. And then the fourth one is IoT Core. And on this GitHub repository, you will see those implementations, not for the same use case that we did today, but for similar type of implementation, so that you can see how you can do it. I hope that this session was exciting. I hope that you learned some new things, and I hope that you now can go home with additional things to investigate and assess how you can also make your applications more seamless. And I hope that you will be able to solve the "Are we there yet?" problem for your own applications. Thank you so much. Don't forget to rate our session on the application of today. And if you have any questions, we'll be walking around, so feel free to come and ask us questions. Thank you so much. Good.
The clicker was not working.
Sorry?
It was not